There, can you grab those audio boxes?
Oh,
Yeah, just in case they get in.
So not tonight, but in the next couple days, do you guys want to do dinner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sarah, just real quick,
Yeah.
can you look at that frame and just tell me when this is out?
Yeah, we're just having leftovers tonight anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to Caitlin's for dinner tonight.
What's that?
Going to Caitlin's for
That's
dinner.
out.
Okay, looks good. Okay, we're rolling.
Is this something, there's like right, what is that right there in the corner? It's not the back, is it the brick? Is it gone
Wait, I think it's
now? Or
that.
the wall or something?
Could you just move your right hand down a sec? Yeah, it's the wall.
Okay, great.
Okay, rolling.
Cool. So what we'll do is we'll start with just some early stuff, and we'll kind of work our way through. If there's anything that you want to go back to, we can go back to. If there's a
You're
story
going to basically guide me with questions.
Yeah, I'm going to guide you with questions. If there's a story that comes up twice, it's cool if you tell it a second time. It doesn't matter. Everything's going to be edited together after, and we'll make it look nice and smooth. And if you at any point need a moment, grab water, go to the bath, whatever, just let us know, and we'll cut and we'll start again.
Okay.
Cool?
Yeah, just go cut.
Yeah, you'll just say, hey, I need to, and then I'll.
Just before we start,
I need a moment.
Travis, that black thing hanging off the back just came into a shot.
Okay, let me tape that up.
It was a little bit easier inside, I bet.
Yeah, but it wasn't as nice. We've been in that room so often. I'm just like,
It's starting to fill up with stories.
yeah, it's just, there's only so many things you can, so many different ways you can
Cool.
shoot that room.
All right.
That looks new.
Good.
All right. So let's start with tell us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about your childhood.
My name is Kurt Gifford Holsapple. I used to be from Germantown, and now I live in Catskill. About my childhood. I was precocious. It was a typical childhood in the early 50s. I went outside in the morning, didn't go home until lunchtime, went back outside till it was dinner time. And during the summer, you were called in when it was time to go to bed. So I didn't have helicopter parents in that regard. And I grew up next to the Coons on Camp Creek Road, where we had this a group of kids, mostly boys, that hung out together, the three Coonses and me, David Crine and Bill Steery and what's his name? Ernest Lasher, who the Anchorage is named after. Died in Vietnam 2 weeks before his tour was over. He's the only one that I know died here from Vietnam.
What were your parents like?
My father was an English teacher. It was bittersweet. You know, I mean, I'm grateful that I have the education I do, because it wasn't just in school. But his relationship with his wife, my mother, was not healthy. Let's put it that way. There were times when you, at the dinner table, you didn't know if it was going to be a nice day. Suddenly, just a thunderstorm of emotions where my mother would just burst out. That would go on until early in the morning sometimes, where she would be acting like that. It was a bittersweet childhood.
What would an average day, when you were 8, 9, 10, what was the average day for you?
During school, I was in school, which you do the school thing. But in the summer, 8 or 9, well, my father had his first heart attack when I was 8 years old. And for some reason, I found a book. I was in the attic, and I found a book of Butterflies of North America and saw that he had collected And for some reason, the next day I started collecting and have been ever since, off and on. So that leads to what was a typical summer day. When I was at it, in that, go butterfly collecting. We made nets, we made moth traps, raised caterpillars. Had a friend over in East Durham who had a butterfly farm, who was in his 80s, who could get butterflies and moths from all over the world, and we would go over there after cherry season was done. So we'd camp in the Catskills and then go see Max Richter, get eggs and stuff like that. We fished a lot. We spent a lot of time on the Hudson River. I don't know, it was black and white TV. No cell phones, The telephone number was 4 digits. It was a while ago.
Is there a story that comes to mind that kind of encapsulates your precociousness?
All right, I'm gonna the telephone pole hole. Well, we used to 4 or 5 of us would go butterfly hunting quite often together. But then there were times I would just go by myself, and I was coming home from one of these solo butterfly excursions, and I was walking up Camp Creek Road, what we used to call Cales Hill, and there was a piece of plywood on the ground with a rock on it, and I, what's that there for? So I took the rock off and moved the piece of plywood, and there was a hole for a telephone pole. And for some reason I thought, well, I'll sit in here and, with my feet. And I realized I could get in it and not get stuck. So I lowered myself down to my elbows and then just let go. And I found myself 3 body lengths down with this little hole like the size of a quarter of blue sky. And I yelled help a couple of times and realized that wasn't going to get me anywhere. So I jimmied my hands down, dug a little foothold, jimmied myself up to that one, kept my foot in that, dug another one, finally got out, put the plywood back where it was, put the rock exactly where it was before, went home, went upstairs, lied on my bed, and I didn't tell anybody about this story until you and your daughter, your sister, were alive. Yeah, that was some bones in the closet. But I look at it this way now. I mean, it was the first time in my life that it was seriously only me that could get me out of this situation. And that, I look at it as a gift now. Because all the other emergencies that have come along since then have not seemed quite as dire. Or,
What were
faced with death, in a sense.
Right. What were what was your family like other than your parents? What were your sisters?
Well, my sisters, I have 2 older sisters. Tish is 6 years older than I am, and Denny is 12 years older than I am, so we rarely had childhood experiences. What I remember is, once again, right around 12 years old, Jenny was having her family. And we would, it would be Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter dinners and stuff like that. So it would be, our interactions were more of, holidays instead of real siblings. So.
As far as schooling goes, how was...
all in one building, as you recall.
What was it like to be in school in Germantown and to have a parent just down the hall?
I couldn't get away. I challenged the administration by making them realize things like I was sitting on the bleachers that were going in the new gym that hadn't been installed, And Mr. Vale, the principal, said, you have to get off of those. And I said, Mr. Vale, I'm really not doing anything wrong. Why don't you go after the boys who are smoking in the bathroom right now, who are really breaking some rules? I also, I and a couple of my friends on the first Earth Day insisted on having an assembly. And Mr. Vale did acquiesce, and we did have a small assembly. And my thoughts about that now are Earth Day really hasn't done that much for the Earth yet. So it's still something that we hope for.
What else sticks out in school? Were you involved in any extracurriculars? Or
I started the art club when I was in 7th grade. Extracurricular, I did sports until my senior year. And the reason I decided not to after that was because the length of my hair was an issue. And if I was on first string, it wasn't an issue. But if I was on second string, as I was in basketball, it was an issue, and I felt that was quite hypocritical. So I asked the coach when I got off the bus the first day of my senior year of school, is it going to be the same? He said, yeah. I said, well, I'm not playing then. So I stopped. I didn't do many other extracurricular things. I was in a play once, my senior class play. Was the lead, but I don't remember much about it at all. So.
what about track?
Oh yeah, I started track too. Me and a few other friends. And I still hold the record for the long jump. 39 feet 11 inches. 1 inch short of 40. Didn't do baseball at all. I didn't like baseball. It was too much of a team sport. So. And soccer. I played soccer. And once again, there was it was a team sport. You depended on other people, and they depended on you. It never felt like a team. Like a musical band plays together, but a team. It felt like their egos were in the way more than the idea of it's a team. So I stayed away. I didn't do Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts. Wear a uniform, 10-cent dues every week. What, are you kidding me? I don't want to do that. It's scary. It's indoctrination in a sense, isn't it? Getting you ready for the military.
As you grew up in the town, what influence did your generation have on the town changing from the?
Well, I was sort of the tail end of the hippies. I don't know if we really, changed the influence other than just our, how we, our dress, our behavior. I remember my parents telling me when they were courting. This is during the Prohibition. That they used to drive out in Colpake area. They drive up to a farmer's house and they come and knock on the door. Farmer would open the door and they'd hand him 25 cents. He'd hand him a bottle of wine, but they never spoke because if they got caught, I never spoke to this guy. And it started out with one bottle for the front seat and the back seat, and because they were double dating, they came to 2 bottles, one for the front seat, one for the back seat. So I don't think that we really changed, it any more than our parents did, and their parents did, and their parents did. Each generation does that. I don't think we were significant other than that was our time. They were pretty tumultuous with Vietnam and everything going on.
With Vietnam going on, what was the feeling for you or for the people around you when you were at the prime age for the draft?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It seemed that the older generation was more pro-war and knocking down communism, than we were. I mean, when it first started, I was for the war. I thought, we've got to go in there and fix it. My parents did too. But as it went on and on and on, and as I became of age, it seemed so ludicrous what we were doing. You saw, battle action every night on the news. I saw that guy got shot through the head live on the TV. I also saw Lee Harvey Oswald get shot live on TV. They were really, everything was, it seems like everything was in a flux. Civil rights, war, assassination of both the Kennedys and Martin Luther King. It just felt like it. It didn't seem, it wasn't the America we were taught in school. It was more real, and I don't know how to explain it. It didn't feel right. I don't know. It just didn't feel right.
Well, your friends were...
We were against the war. Well, we were going to be going to war if, we didn't go to college. After I graduated high school, I wanted to take some time off and get a job, but I couldn't because my draft number, I think, was 169. So I had to go to college. And I was lucky to go to the college I did because it was the only one I wanted to go to that accepted me. Which was, and that was an eye-opener for me, especially about artwork. So I'm just now starting to figure out what they were trying to get across to us back then when I was 19, 20, 21, and 22. And so I'm lucky in that regard. Back to the draft, there was one year I think we understood that at the end of the year, if you went into the draft office and said, I want to be 1A, like on January 27th or just before we're coming back from college for Christmas vacation, that if you didn't get drafted by January 1st, they couldn't draft you anymore. So we all went into the draft office and signed up for 1A, and none of us got drafted. So.
Do you remember where you were when JFK was assassinated?
I was in 6th grade, sitting in the second row from the window, about 5 chairs back, when Mr. Mortensen, the principal, came over the loudspeaker and said that our president had just been assassinated. And I'm not going to tell the name of the person who did this, but there was one boy in the class who clapped and went, yay. And the rest of the class just immediately turned to him and said, what are you thinking? It's the president who's been shot. And I think it really changed his point of view about it. Well, he certainly was upset that he had reacted so quickly in such a manner. So, and that night I was watching TV while my parents were making dinner when I saw them leading Lee Harvey Oswald, from somewhere to somewhere, and what's his name comes up and shoots him, Jack Ruby. And I go in and I tell my parents, they just shot Lee Harvey Oswald. They said, no, it was the president. I said, no, come look, because they came, they could replay pretty fast back then. So, in the morning, the president is dead. That night, his assassin is dead. It's these things happen in America. Yeah, they do, but we overlook it in a lot of ways.
So after high school, you went to Alfred.
Yep.
And then you came back.
No, not quite.
Okay.
I went to Alfred. My woodworking professor. I went to the ceramic art school at Alfred University in search of a BFA degree. I didn't do any ceramics while I was there. Now, I lost my train of thought. Help me here.
Okay, just to keep going on that. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
College. College is fine.
Well, now I totally lost my train of thought.
Okay, so
That's okay.
you went to
Oh
Alfred
yeah.
for
So my
ceramics.
professor worked for Wendell Castle when he apprenticed with Wendell Castle for 2 years, and he finagled me a job working for Wendell Castle. So from Alfred, your mother and I took a trip after she graduated. I stayed on another year because we were in a relationship. And once she graduated, we drove across country to Albuquerque, New Mexico, because she was very, very interested in printmaking. And there's Tamarind Press out there, and she really wanted to go see it. So we did that, and we went up and stayed a couple of weeks in Colorado with some college friends. And then from that, we drove back, and back here to Germantown, and then I was off for 2 years to Rochester, outside of Rochester in Scottsville, to apprentice, which was an eye-opener also. I didn't get to really do a lot of woodworking myself. I did a lot of sanding and a lot of surfacing of wood, but I listened a lot, and I learned a lot just by being present there. And Wendell at the time had a foreman whose name is Stephen Proctor, who is one of the finest craftsmen I have ever met. And his eye-hand coordination are amazing. And he sort of took me under his wing for a while and helped me with the basics of joinery and stuff. So, and then after the apprenticeship, Susan and I came back and we got married, and we lived with my parents until we bought the barn over on the extension. As soon as I had the toilet seat on the bathroom toilet, we moved in the next day. It took, we put it in 78, it took until February of 80 to move in. And the shop was on the first floor, and the second floor.
What was the biggest difference when you came back from that experience? How did you see the town differently or the community differently?
One of the biggest things I noticed was how many people were moving up from the city to retire here and have weekend and summer homes here. And during the week, it felt like it was almost barren or a ghost town in a way. And then all of a sudden there would be this influx, expensive cars, people in town and stuff. Which I felt was pretty good because it was real quiet during the week, and you only had to tolerate these people during the weekends. And that's kept on going. I mean, there's fewer natives or the old folks around, and the politics and everything are being taken over by these people moving in, and it's fine. It should be. Germantown, I feel, is about 15 years behind the times anyway. Still, in a lot of respects.
Why do you think that is?
I'm not really sure. I just think a lot of people are afraid of change, and they like it the way it is. They like it quiet. It is a very quiet little town. This afternoon, Main Street is closed down already. It's autos is shut. The liquor store isn't open. You got the corner over here where you can get stuff. And it's also, a lot of the farmers are, that are gone, but there's still farming families. I mean, Nadine is still, they rent their land so they can have agricultural status. So. It feels good now that I'm now living in Catskill to be not here. I feel like it sort of relates to how it's so changing. There's just not that much viability for the crafts and the arts. I mean, there are a lot of artists here, but they're mostly represented from the city and stuff like that. So, and where I'm now is it's a gathering of talents because it's a community. I'm part of I don't know how to, a gathering of talents where I'm a woodworker, there's a metal worker, there's people who work on CNC machines, there's going to be fabric, there's going to be pottery, there's going to be metal, besides the metal that, I mean, there's going to be metal casting, leather making. I mean, the fellow who's doing all this, he says we're going to be able to make all our own clothes also. It's going to be that close, you know, self-generating, you know, a lot of the materials will, for the bakery and stuff like that, we'll be growing ourselves. It's a new and exciting thing that I stumbled into.
You had mentioned about the farming. Did you ever spend any time working on the farm as a kid, or doing
Well, I
any
didn't really
jobs?
get paid for it, but I was always in the packing houses during apple and pear season at the Coons's, just because the three boys were there helping out, and what else? You know, when we got done with that, then we could go to Dales Bridge to go swimming. I did try and pick cherries one year for Bobby Coons, but you got paid 10 cents a pound. I picked 100 pounds in one day. That was only $10. And my fingers, get them, each of an inch near each other, and they would start screaming because you picked the sweet cherries with the stems instead of stripping the sour cherries. So that lasted a very short time. I was not going to make any money doing that. So.
Did you have any other odd jobs around town?
I trimmed trees for Alan Van Tassel for 2 winters with Mo Ryder, which was an experience not to be forgotten. We trimmed a lot of trees. It was every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, unless during duck season we heard some gunshots on the river. Okay, we're going duck hunting for a while. So, but we finished all the trip. It was hard work, but it was good. Fresh air.
Moving forward a little bit. So you came back and you started a family.
Yeah.
Was there something about the town that made you want to have a family here, or was it just where you ended up, or what was it that made this town
Okay,
desirable?
I've got a little story about why I finally came back here. Because when I went to college, I mentioned that my family life was not that good with my parents, and I swore I was never coming back once I graduated. But every time I came back for a vacation, it just hooked me a little bit more. Until finally, you know, done with college, done with my apprenticeship, where do I want to go? I figured I had already ruined my reputation here. People knew that I was a little bit off and creative and see things differently, and I figured they would let me do it, and they did for quite a few years. I did get some financial support, you know, commissions and stuff from town, but most of it wasn't from here. So, and then, you know, the economy went south in 2008, and that I just didn't have any work for 3 years until I got lucky enough to have a contractor hook me up with Rob Kalin, who I built the kitchen for, who was the guy who started Etsy. So that's where I'm working now.
What about raising a family here? What do you think it is about the town that makes it so conducive to that? Or what do you think it gives as a gift to the family?
You don't see many helicopter parents around here because you don't have to be a helicopter parent. You know, you can, there were even laws for kids to wear helmets with bikes when you were a kid. We didn't have it. We used to ride on the back of the tailgate to Dales Bridge to go swimming, dragging our feet on the road. You know, I mean, it was. There's that still. There's an aspect of that part of this community that's still there in a sense. You know, and I think that's, well, for me anyway. I was always out doing something. I can remember one of the Coons boys asking his father, "Dad, I'm bored. What is there to do?" And I remember you saying that too. And I just was. There's so much to do. How can you be bored here? I mean, I think I was bored maybe 2 or 3 times because I was sick and I couldn't do anything. So, I don't know. I mean, it's just well, it's the Hudson Valley too. You've got the playground of the Catskills. You've got the Hudson Rivers. You know, these are all. We could walk to the Hudson. A 20-minute drive, we were in the Catskills. You know, I mean, it's a great place to raise children. I think the school system needs to be improved. I don't know.
Sarah, do you have anything?
Going back a little bit, you had mentioned that you told on the boys that were smoking in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
That couldn't have helped to make you popular with the other kids. Was that important to you, or how did you feel that you've also?
Well, I was making the point to the principal that I wasn't really breaking a rule,
Right.
and there were other people. Obviously, it wasn't just in the boys' room; the girls were doing it too. You know, and I mean, if you're going to be a principal, you got to keep the rules. You know, I mean, and. Because I don't think Mr. Vale and my father, who was the head of the English department, really had a good relationship, that he sort of had it out for me in a way, and I had it out for him because I didn't think he was that good of a principal. There's a deer right over there behind you, walking through the brush. Now you can't see it.
With me.
He's about 200 feet away.
Well, we're interviewing him next. So.
Yeah, he's showing up early,
Yeah, right.
or she.
But also, I guess you also mentioned that Germantown already knew you as being a little odd, in your words. Like, are there stories from high school or from before you went to college or younger that really exemplify your oddness, but also how you thought the town might have seen you? Times you felt different or realized that there was some...
No, it's not that I felt different. I knew I was different.
Well, if you could talk about that.
It's, my mother was an art major from Pratt. So she had one eye and she could draw female figures and male figures with such beauty. My father his first degree was as a librarian, so he knew books. And then he became an English teacher, and I had him for English in 11th and 12th grade. There's a story behind that, and I'll tell that in a minute. But so I feel I was exposed to the arts. I got art supplies for Christmas every year. My parents could recite Shakespeare at the dinner table, conjugate Greek and German, and knew the whole poem that was The Night Before Christmas went all through the house. So I was, and there was every Saturday afternoon there was opera on. You know, they listened to classical music. So I was exposed to a lot of these things that a lot of the other people weren't. And I think the town people, you know, could see that, you know, how I was being raised, both in this good part of it, and also the situation between my parents, my mother being an alcoholic and my father being a codependent. You know, it's like any coin and has two sides. And the town is accepting of that. I mean, when my father first had his heart attack, for that one Christmas, he was in the hospital. And Paul Hubert's father brought over a Christmas tree. You know, just like that. People just dropped off clothes. Just like that. And I mean, the town knew, you know, something was up. But the town, just like with Dow, the town just, you know, just sort of didn't mention it, you know. Or if they did it so discreetly that, and they didn't do it with any, you know, judgment or vindictiveness. They just, you know, it's that country attitude, you know. You raise a barn together, you know. This family is in trouble, so you subtly and silently help. You know, I mean, it's. Besides, we had these great big butterfly nets. 4 or 5 of us tromping through the fields and in the woods. We'd go around at night around the streetlights before they switched them over to yellow to collect moths. And we had these things that would telescope, and we could flick them off when they were on the telephone pole. And the town cops one time stopped us and said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "We're just collecting butterflies or moths now." And we showed them some of the females that we had caught that night and had in paper bags that were laying eggs so we could raise them. And they calmly got back in the car and like left. You're okay. You're not doing anything wrong. Actually,
You said you had a story about having your father as your teacher.
yeah. My father did most of the reading to me before I went to bed at night when I was a kid. And it was towards the end of his career as a teacher, and he did a lot of reading in class. And Pavlovian training fell right in, because every time he read, my head was down on the desk. I couldn't help it. You know, and he said, "Kurt," one time, and I said, "What?" He said, "You keep on going to sleep." I said, "I can't help it, Dad. It's Pavlovian."
Was there a difference between him as
I've got another story about
yeah,
my father.
Go for it.
All right. The night we're sitting at the table, the first night I had him for class for the first time. So we're sitting there, and I go, "So, Dad, what was homework for tonight?" "I don't know. You were there." Then he said, "I've had both of your sisters, and I'm going to tell you the same thing I've told them. You're going to have to work twice as hard to get the same grade as anybody else, and they're still going to think I'm going to be giving you favors." And this is going to go on a little bit longer than I thought, but one of the things that he had us do 11th grade was memorize a passage from Shakespeare. And we had a written exam, and the next day we were going to have an oral exam. And I had fought with him at night at the dinner table about having to memorize. I said, "You know I memorize. I memorize the words to the songs I like." He said, "No, but you have to do this." I said, "Okay." So I had studied enough in the little black book that up to that page, writing test. So I cheated. And I figured I better get a 100. That's right. So I figured it out to get about a 72. And the next day was the oral, and I got a 33. And the next day was the retest, and I got a 99, which averaged out to a 64, which was 1 point below failing. And the rest of the classmates were saying, "You got to give him the other point. You got to give him the other point." And he was in a quandary. And I finally had to, there's a buzzard. I finally had to say, "I earned what I earned. He can't change my grade. He's my father."
So then there was a difference between the teacher and the father.
Yeah, he separated. I mean, he would not, I mean, he was the teacher in school, but he wasn't going to help you as the teacher at home, other than just be who he was and the way he was. Never helped me with the class, never helped me with any of my homework, really, ever. Yeah, there was a big difference, but it was good.
What do you think you learned from him?
together a few times when he could. He taught me, to appreciate the arts. Those are all good qualities. He also taught me, the battles, the war that my parents fought, they taught me a lot of stuff, both good and bad. And today I can look at a lot of the things that I really regretted about my childhood that are now assets. They're tools that I can use, because I don't think I'm a poet, but I like to write poetry. And I don't think I would do that if, he wasn't my father. So, and my mother was also an influence too. Because of my father's heart attack, there was about a 2 or 3 year gap where he was in the hospital almost, as I recall, and then he had to convalesce so slowly at home that I was 8, and then I was 11, and then we started fishing together after that, and then when I got to be 16, we went hunting a couple of times, and he taught me some really good lessons, about being out in the woods and stuff like that. Which, I don't feel like I had a relationship with my father like a lot of children do, because he had been so absent for so long, and how he had to really take care of himself afterwards. He wasn't expected to live but another 3 or 4 years, and he lived to be 72, and he had his first heart attack at 40. So, but we had dinner for him for his last birthday party at the barn, and I remember distinctly him saying, "This is going to be my last birthday." And that was in May, and he died in November in my arms. That was something important to experience. I saw you two for one. I've seen both my parents die, so I'm just sort of stuck in the middle.
Sarah, do you have anything before we do this question?
This is different than we've talked about, but do you have any sense of other kinds of, like, you've talked about sort of educational and priority art differences in Germantown as you've understood it over your time here? Can you talk a little bit about economic or racial, class, any of those?
There wasn't much
differences?
racial, because there weren't very many blacks or other nationalities. The only ones that were here that I sort of remember is that, during apple picking season, there were still migrant workers working, and that some of them would send their children to school. And we knew they weren't going to be there the whole year. And I don't really know. I'm sure there was a lot of prejudice. I felt it at times too. But it wasn't overt. Which is, I think that's good. Better than having people fight with one another. Economy, well, it was agriculture, basically. Taconic Farms is the largest employer still. But that started out really teeny. It was just here at first. Most people, it's a bedroom community, I guess. There's the teachers that, either lived in the community or arrived here every day, or, other people went to Hudson, to Kingston, to IBM, to Catskill, whatever. And then the little grocery store. Lawler's was open when I was a kid. The drugstore on the corner, which is now Germantown Variety. Also, when I was I was of age. When I was 18. It was still it was legal to drink it. When Germantown had 5 bars, I think it was. For a small little town like that, I mean, it's the largest number of similar businesses in town are bars. Anyway.
So, again, you had mentioned putting on the toilet seat in the barn. You moved right in. For someone who's never been there, can you describe the barn before you moved in, and then as it may have changed over the years that you lived there?
First time I saw the barn, I walked in the doors to the south, and I looked out, and there's this opening in the second floor where they used to raise and lower the sleighs and carriages when they were out of season to store them up there. And I could see all the way up to the cupola, which had, at that time, all the 4 stained windows were still intact. And I knew right away I had to buy this place. I wasn't going to look anywhere else. It was just instantaneous. And maybe it's because I'm part of the Hover family. I don't know. Are we believe in stuff like that? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Depends on my mood. But it was basically a shell. There was no electricity. There was no running water. There was no chimney. Oh, there was electricity. That was all that was there. And I slowly started putting it together. And I didn't finish before I left either. So I've always lived in a state of construction, which I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll make my casket if I decide to be married. That's the only thing I think I'll really ever finish. Well, nothing's ever finished. Even if it's finished, it's not finished.
I guess one other thing that we really haven't touched on in any of our interviews that I'm curious about is, what role does religion play in Germantown?
I think it plays more of a it played more of a role for a lot of people than it did for my family. And I know for myself because I was raised an Episcopalian and I was an altar boy. And one Sunday after service, we were disrobing and Father Jones said, "You can't serve anymore." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because your hair is too long." Again, my hair's too long. And I look at him, and I look at the picture of Christ on the wall, and I look back at him, and I look at the picture of Christ on the wall, and I say nothing. And I go out, and I get in the car with my parents, and I said, "I can't serve anymore." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Because Father Jones is a hypocrite." He said, "My hair's too long." And I look at the picture of Christ. And they said, "Fine." They both were raised Episcopal. I don't know how much religious education they had, but they chose the Episcopal religion. They became very religious in their later years, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of names of gods and goddesses that we've forgotten already. You know, I don't know which one to really. I mean, is there really just one? Is there one at all, or is there a whole bunch? Just we change our point of view. Who's popular now? Jesus, Allah. Why not Thor?
Heard he's got a pretty good hammer.
And I bet you he uses it well too.
So we have a couple questions that we do at the end that we're asking each person. So we'll go through those. What in Germantown has changed the most since you've been here?
Technology, but that's anywhere. I mean, in terms of Germantown itself, it's more diverse because we have so many people moving in. And that's a good thing, mostly. What else is different? There's far less farming going on. And that's sad. I mean, this CSEA up there or whatever it was that was going up on where Winchies used to live. I don't think they're really doing that anymore. And I was so encouraged when that happened, thinking that, you know, hey, let's have some modern thinking about agriculture and health and stuff like that. Next.
Well, on the flip side, what do you think has stayed the same? What's the constant? What's reliable as Germantown goes?
It's conservative. That's one thing that hasn't changed. It's still rural. We don't have strip mall on 9G, thank God. You know, what we have there is necessary in a way, but we're not. It's not like Red Hook is trying to be, and what Rhinebeck has become, and what Hudson has done. You know, it's not a boom town yet, and I hope it never is. You still have, you know, you have the conservatives and you have the liberals. Yeah, but I think that they get along a little bit better now. I don't know. I don't really pay attention to politics, nor town politics for that matter, but I don't hear as much about it.
What does Germantown mean to you personally?
It's where I grew up. It's the foundation. These were my formative years were here, and pretty much, free. We'd go and do what we wanted. As kids, all day long we could do what we wanted to do, unobserved most of the time. That's important. I mean, I wanted to instill that in you too. I wanted you guys to get. That's why I did the butterflies and moths again, and the reptiles and the amphibians. I wanted you guys to be interested in that kind of stuff, because that's what kept me going here. But how else is it important? I don't know. I mean, it is. There are places that I know like the back of my hand that are in the woods. I don't think many kids these days have places like that. And I think that's something that's really missing. That freedom to be out there. Like Rick Brown says, free. We were free. We were running through our imaginations, and the woods at the same time. We were free. Like only kids could be free. That's what's important.
On the same vein, if you could impart ideals or wisdom to the future of this town, what do you think it would be that you would want to pass on?
A more open-mindedness about the arts. Especially in school. What else would I want to see that possibly change for the better? I'm not. That's a tough question. I think it's pretty much left up to the individual to either make their life better or not. And if you can do that in a community, great. If you can't do it in a community, do it anyway. But do it. I often feel now these days, since it's been so many years since I've been in the educational system, that was just the foundation. Because now I'm the teacher. I have to teach myself because that's the only person who is there for me to teach right now. In a way, I'm a teacher student also, especially in this new situation. I'm learning from other people as I'm teaching from other people. So I think And I don't think it's just for Germantown. I think it's just an open-mindedness to be able to listen without already thinking of a response. Just the pure act of listening without, oh, but I have to say this or that's more for mankind, I think, than just Germantown.
Perfect. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
It's
I didn't swear.
no, and you could have. It's fine. It's actually funny to hear you describe things because, like your childhood, because I'm just it transfers over to mine, and I didn't realize, or I guess I didn't think about those things until they came up here. When I was asking the question, what was it like to have a teacher, that was also a parent, that was down the hall at all times. I was thinking, well, there's that for
Well,
me
your mother
as well.
was in school,
right? I mean, she wasn't my teacher, thank God.
Right.
But she was a teacher, and there's a lot of other parallels of going out and not coming back until dark. It's really interesting to figure that out. So thanks for doing that.
You're more than welcome.
Here, we'll do it there. Thank you. I appreciate it.